Like, subscribe, and follow Insight Global to stay updated on stories shaping our world. China has just taken a step that could reshape the global balance of power. In Kuala Lumpur, under its guidance, more than 20 nations came together. This was no ordinary summit or symbolic gathering. It was the foundation of a new bloc, linking Southeast Asia, the Gulf states, and China into one powerful orbit. Collectively, they represent more than $25 trillion in economic weight and over 2 billion people. For years, BRICS was considered the primary alternative to Western dominance. But this emerging alliance goes even further. Today, it already accounts for more than half of global economic growth, granting real influence over trade, energy, and investment that touch every corner of the globe. While Washington is preoccupied with political disputes and tariff battles, Beijing is building connections, figuratively and literally. From high-speed rail in Indonesia to vast energy deals with Gulf nations, this is not just a summit of speeches. It is the blueprint for a functioning economic system. The question is no longer if this shift matters. It already does. The real question is how far it will go, and what it will mean for the future of American power. In Kuala Lumpur, history may have reached a turning point. By gathering ASEAN states, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and itself under one framework, China has laid the foundation for something far larger than another regional meeting, an economic bloc capable of reshaping the global center of gravity. The numbers tell the story. Together, these countries generate $25 trillion in GDP and represent over 2 billion people. And this is not a plan on paper, it is already happening. Collectively, they drive about 55% of global economic growth, making them the engine of today's world economy. If this bloc begins coordinating trade, energy, and technology, momentum builds that even long-standing powers must recognize. Compared to this coalition, BRICS now looks modest, weakened by its internal divisions. By contrast, the new alliance is grounded in shared interests, trade corridors, energy flows, and investment pipelines already connecting its members. This is no longer just speeches or vision statements. It is the outline of a parallel system, complete with supply chains, settlement currencies, and infrastructure functioning outside the reach of Washington and Brussels. That is why this summit mattered. It was less about rhetoric and more about signaling a shift. The Global South is ready to act collectively. And subsequent developments have only highlighted how quickly U.S. influence is receding. America remains the world's largest economy on paper, but its grip on the rules of global trade is slipping. Long-standing allies are hedging their bets. The European Union has strengthened links with Mercosur in South America. Vietnam has signed agreements with the EU and Canada to diversify exports. Even Japan and South Korea, long aligned with Washington, are deepening trade across Asia. Each move chips away at America's central role in the global economy. The message is simple. Tariffs drive partners to find alternatives, and most of those alternatives point toward Beijing. Southeast Asia provides the clearest example of this transformation. For decades, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Malaysia depended heavily on U.S. markets. But as Washington imposed wave after wave of tariffs, those ties weakened, and Beijing stepped in with alternatives. Consider Indonesia. In April, after Washington applied 10% duties on a broad range of goods, Jakarta's trade surplus collapsed. By May, it had dropped to $160 million, the lowest in 5 years. At the same time, imports of machinery and equipment from China and Singapore rose more than 20%. The pattern is clear. When the U.S. market closes, Indonesia seeks new paths, and the first open door leads to Beijing. Vietnam faced a similar blow when U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum doubled to 50%. Exports to the U.S. dropped 27% at the start of 2025, a heavy hit for an export-driven economy. But Hanoi adapted, strengthening ties with China and its regional partners. Trade numbers prove the shift. In 2024, Asia's commerce with China hit $982 billion, almost 20% of the region's total trade. By 2025, that number was climbing even higher, driven by agreements focused on future industries like digital services, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. And these aren't just signatures on paper. They're projects on the ground. The ASEAN Express cargo line, linking Malaysia to Chongqing, cuts delivery times for manufacturers. In Indonesia, the $7 billion Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, part of the Belt and Road Initiative, has already carried more than 9 million passengers since late 2023. These are visible signs of how deeply the region is moving into China's orbit. The result? ASEAN is no longer a loose collection of small economies caught in the middle. It is becoming China's factory floor, investment hub, and gateway into global supply chains. And this transformation is only the beginning. Energy and infrastructure are shifting as well. Malaysia's Kuantan port expansion with Chinese support has doubled capacity, making it the largest hub for iron ore and industrial goods transshipment. Indonesia is building new terminals to handle rising container flows. These are not just ports, they are anchors redirecting supply chains eastward, away from Western-dominated routes. Energy shows the same trajectory. For decades, oil priced in dollars gave Washington unmatched leverage. But that dominance is fading. Today, around 30% of Saudi oil exports are traded in non-dollar currencies, and the share is expected to grow. In 2023, China and French firm Total Energies executed the first LNG trade settled in yuan, proof even Western companies recognize where the trend is headed. And in renewables, Beijing is far ahead. It produces 80% of global solar panels, leads in wind turbine exports, and dominates the battery supply chain. Whether the world runs on fossil fuels or clean energy tomorrow, China is positioned at the center. Meanwhile, the Gulf is pivoting too. Once tied tightly to Washington for security and oil, Gulf states are forging long-term partnerships with Asia. Trade with ASEAN already exceeds $130 billion, with a target of $180 billion by 2032. Investments are expanding beyond oil, into artificial intelligence, digital finance, and renewable energy, where China and Southeast Asia are already leaders. At the Kuala Lumpur summit, Indonesian President Widodo openly backed China's call against external domination and voiced support for Palestine, a message that resonated deeply with Gulf leaders. Asian and Arab voices are beginning to speak in unison. Once, BRICS was seen as the chief challenger to the old order. But the network now forming from Jakarta to Riyadh carries even greater weight. It does not wait for inclusion in existing Western-led structures. It is creating an alternative that could soon rival the system built after World War II. This shift is happening faster than many expected. What began as trade summits is becoming a full-fledged economic and political framework, capable of operating independently of the West. For the United States, this is more than a challenge. It is a signal that the post-war order, once seen as immovable, is being replaced in real time. The question now is not whether this system will rise, but how much of the world it will bring with it. Like, subscribe, and follow Insight Global as we continue tracking this transformation.